Well, I guess most people here have heard of the seven deadly sins. The ones in the Christian tradition go pride, greed, lust, envy, gluttony, wrath, and sloth. Now, these days, I don't think people seem to find too much wrong with those. Pride is, well, it's kind of a normal thing for people to try and emulate. If you see someone strutting around, some celebrity or some famous person, then the chances are that a lot of people are going to try and emulate that person. So these days, there's nothing wrong with pride. Greed, well, we worship greed, don't we? You know, the likes of, what's his name? Bezos and Elon Musk. Millions of young people have it drilled into them that if they work hard and do whatever else, they can become rich and famous. In other words, just emulate the greed of these people like Bezos. Lust, well, there's lots of lust around. Lusting after things, after people, after anything almost. Our consumer society is built on lust. Envy, well, envy is an everyday occurrence. We want to do better than the guy across the road. We want to be more attractive than the person across the road. It's all driven by envy. Gluttony, well, I don't need to say much on that. I don't think in Western society most people are horribly overweight. But of course there's not just gluttony where food is concerned, there's gluttony where possessions and money and pretty much everything that you can consume is concerned. Wrath, a lot of angry people around. You know, don't upset anyone on the freeway. They might just ram you. I saw an instance of that when I was in the United States once. But it's the same everywhere. People get angry very quickly. So wrath, no problem with that. And sloth. Well, I wouldn't say I wouldn't say that sloth is actually a deadly sin. It's the one that I personally disagree with. I think sloth is a wonderful thing if you can cultivate it. To be consciously slothful. So I think the religious people got it wrong there. I think sloth is not such a bad thing. But anyway, what I want to talk about, so that's religion's seven deadly sins. I want to talk about society's seven deadly sins. Society has to have normalizing procedures, mechanisms for making sure that you are a well-behaved member of society and that you perform some kind of useful function for society. For people who might wonder what this whole thing called existence is about and how to live a reasonable life, becoming a good member of society should not be their number one aim. Happily, for society, most people are quite happy to acquiesce to the pressures that would say you have to become a good member of society. So society is not in any way in danger because societal pressures are very large, and so people will do the things that they're told in the main. But these seven deadly sins I'm going to mention are the conditions that society puts upon people and frowns upon people if they transgress them. So the first one is never think about or meditate upon your death, or death generally. If you do that, if you try and talk to anyone about death, you will find yourself on your own in a little corner somewhere with no one to speak to because no one wants to talk about death. This is one of society's deadly sins. that you might want to contemplate or talk about or discuss the issue of death. No one wants to hear about it. They're all in deep, deep, deep denial. Read Ernest Becker's Denial of Death if you want more information on that. So, if you're going to break out of society's mould, then contemplation upon and possibly meditation and thinking about your own death and the death of everybody around you, the fact that life is a process of decay, might actually help you liberate yourself a little bit from the hypnosis that society seems to be able to impose on people. So, number one, if you want to break society's first of the 7 deadly sins, then you need to think about your death and death in general, what it means, why it is that we live in a world where nothing persists. So, society's first deadly sin is to think about death. The second deadly sin is to consider the futility of existence. I had a conversation very recently within the last few days with someone who has been on their own journey through life. Every counsellor or therapist or religious person or whoever they spoke to said you should not think of life as being futile. It's not healthy. The reality is, thinking of life as futile is very healthy. It will mean that you don't actually attach too much importance to things, because you know that everything is futile. It comes and it goes. And all your efforts one day will amount to zero. So it doesn't matter how intense your ambitions and all the rest of it, they will always come to zero. So number 2, society insists that we do not consider existence as futile, but considering existence as futile is ultimately very liberating. But society doesn't want that. It doesn't want you to be liberated. It wants you to be a slave. So, number 1, don't meditate on death. Number 2, don't think about futility. Number 3, boredom. You shouldn't let yourself get bored. You should always be active, doing something, being productive, whatever that means. So, you should not let yourself become bored. If you become bored, it's equivalent to sloth. But as I said earlier, sloth is actually a fairly useful thing. And so is boredom. You get bored when you're no longer stimulated. Well, what's no longer stimulated? Well, your mind, your emotions, your desires, your sensations. But actually, if you want to get underneath all those things, then boredom is the first step to getting underneath those things and seeing what you really are. So boredom's a good thing. Society doesn't want you to get bored because you might see a little bit too much. You might not be so eager to go down to the mall to buy something or to go out drinking or whatever. So, don't meditate on death, don't think of life as futile, don't get bored. Number 4, you have to endow the universe and your life with meaning and purpose. Of course, these meanings and purposes that we endow life with are always anthropomorphic. They're always some projection of our own wishes, our own drives. But life has no meaning or purpose. It's a wonderfully liberating thing. It means you can create your own. But does life want you? Does society want you to see the whole thing as free of meaning and purpose? No, it doesn't. It wants you to buy into society's meanings and purposes. Number 5, there are no objective truths. Now, that's a big one to deal with in its own right, but basically every creature perceives the universe according to its own mental and sensory structures. You know, bats see the world in terms of echo, sonar. It's just a simple example, but is that orange really the colour orange, and is it really round? Well, no. This is the way our mind represents things to us. So we cannot know objective truths. Everything is relative to the person or thing that is perceiving the world. So there are no objective truths. There's no objective morality. Of course, society wants you to believe there's an objective morality, and it's largely about making sure that no one rocks the boat. But there is no objective morality. You know, for millennia, philosophers and religious people have been striving to establish some kind of objective morality. There isn't one. I think the best that can be said about morality is do no harm, and that's about it. And finally, number 7, you should care about everything. If you care, then society, people, organizations have got their hooks into you. So you're supposed to care about the world. There's nothing you can do about it, or almost nothing. You're supposed to care about maybe all the people that are around you. They want you to care, definitely, because, well, you know, in terms of survival, that enhances their survival prospects. And you're definitely supposed to care about how you feel, what you're thinking, and all those kind of things. So eventually you can come to care, or come not to care about the world, about people around you, and about your own inner states. They just happen, come and go, but you don't particularly care about them. That's a big thing. But we're supposed to care about everything. And that caring keeps us in chains, which is, of course, what society wants. So, if you're going to do anything that might help you move away from the chains that society has around you, then you definitely need to meditate upon your death. You need to see the world as futile. You need to get bored and experience that boredom and see what might lie underneath it. You need to see the world as having no purpose or meaning. You need to see that there are no objective truths. You need to see that there's no objective morality. And you need not to care. And once you've achieved all those things, I will come and bow down before you, because they're extraordinarily difficult to do and to bear. But therein lies freedom. But freedom comes with a very, very, very high price tag. And for most people, it's just not going to happen. Much better to do what society dictates and to live a, well, I was going to say comfortable. It's the case that 1 in 7 people in society actually are consuming antidepressants or anti-anxiety medication, and that percentage is getting higher. So 14% are sucking up antidepressants and so on. So society isn't all that happy. It's 7 deadly sins don't seem to work all that well. So maybe we should meditate on death and all the rest of it. But whatever you do, don't tell anybody.